Therefore, all women who worship you by strictly observing vows because they wish to acquire a husband to satisfy are surely under illusion. They do not know that such a husband cannot actually give protection to them or their children, nor can he protect their wealth or duration of life, for he himself is dependent on time, fruitive results, and the modes of nature, which are all subordinate to you. Interesting verse. Purport. In this verse, Lakshmi Devi, or Rama, shows compassion toward women who worship the Lord for the benediction of possessing a good husband. Although such women desire to be happy with children, wealth, a long duration of life, and everything dear to them, they cannot possibly do so. In the material world, a so called husband is dependent on the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are many examples of a woman whose husband, being dependent on the result of his own fruitive actions, cannot maintain his wife, her children, her wealth, or her duration of life. Therefore, factually, the only real husband of all women is Krishna, the supreme husband. Because the gopis were liberated souls, they understood this fact. Therefore, they rejected their material husbands and accepted Krishna as their real husband. Krishna is the real husband, not only of the gopis, but of every living entity. Everyone should perfectly understand that Krishna is the real husband of all living entities who are described in the Bhagavad Gita as Prakriti, female, not Purusha, the male. In Bhagavad Gita 10.12, only Krishna is addressed as Purusha. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam, Purusham Sasvatam Divyam Adidevam Ajam Vibham. You are the supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode and purifier, the absolute truth, and the eternal divine person. You are the primal God, transcendental and original, and you are the unborn and all pervading beauty. Wow, very nice. Krishna is the original Purusha, and the living entities are Prakriti. Thus, Krishna is the enjoyer, and all living entities are meant to be enjoyed by him. Therefore, any woman who seeks a material husband for her protection, or any man who desires to become the husband of a woman, is under illusion. Well, to become a husband means to maintain a wife and children nicely by supplying wealth and security. However, a material husband cannot possibly do this, for he is dependent on his karma. Karmana daiva natrena. His circumstances are determined by his past activities. Therefore, if one proudly thinks he can protect his wife, he is under illusion. Krishna is the only husband, and therefore the relationship between a husband and wife in this material world cannot be absolute because we have the desire to marry. Krishna mercifully allows so called husband to possess a wife and a wife to possess a so called husband for mutual satisfaction. In the Isha Upanishad, it is said, Tena tyak tena bunjita The Lord provides everyone with his quota. Actually, however, every living entity is Prakriti or female, and Krishna is the only husband. Ekale Ishwara Krishna Ara Sava Britya Yare Yache Nachaya Se Taiche Kare Nritya Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 5:142. Krishna is the original master or husband of everyone and all other living entities. Having taken form of so-called husbands or wives, are dancing according to his desire. A so-called husband may unite with his wife for sense gratification, but his senses are conducted by Krishikesha, the master of the senses, who is therefore the actual husband. Interesting. Text 20. He alone who is never afraid, but who, on the contrary, gives complete shelter to all fearful persons, can actually become a husband and protector. Therefore, my Lord, you are the only husband, and no one else can claim this position. If you were not the only husband, you would be afraid of others. Therefore, persons learned in all Vedic literature accept only your lordship as everyone's master, and they think no one else a better husband and protector than you. Okay, that's nice. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here, the meaning of husband or guardian is clearly explained. People want to become a husband, a guardian, a governor, or a political leader without knowing the actual meaning of such a superior position. There are many people all over the world, indeed throughout the universe, who claim for some time that they are husbands, political leaders, or guardians. But in due course of time, the Supreme Lord desires their removal from their posts, and their careers are immediately finished. Therefore, those who are actually learned and advanced in spiritual life do not accept any leader, husband, or maintainer other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, that's good. Lord Krishna personally states in Bhagavad Gita 1856, Aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokshisyami. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Krishna is not afraid of anyone. On the contrary, everyone is afraid of Krishna. Therefore, he can actually give protection to a subordinate living entity. Since so-called leaders or dictators are completely under the control of material nature, they can never give complete protection to others. Although they claim this ability due to false ego. Na te vitu swartagatim hi Vishnam. People do not know that real advancement in life consists of accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one's master. Instead of deceiving themselves and others by pretending to be all powerful, all political leaders, husbands, and guardians should spread the Krishna consciousness movement so that everyone can learn how to surrender to Krishna, the supreme husband. Okay, text number 21. My dear Lord, you automatically fulfill all the desires of a woman who worships your lotus feet in pure love. However, if a woman worships your lotus feet for a particular purpose, you also quickly fulfill her desires, but in the end, she becomes broken-hearted and laments. Therefore, one need not worship your lotus feet for some material benefit. Well, that's a good, very good verse. Very good advice. Srila Rupa Goswami, purport. Srila Rupa Goswami describes pure devotional service as anya vilasita sunyam gyanakarmadi anavritam. One should not worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead to fulfill some material desire for success in fruitive activities or mental speculation. To serve the lotus feet of the Lord means to serve him exactly as he desires. The neophyte devotee is therefore ordered to worship the Lord strictly according to the regulative principles given by the spiritual master and the Shastras. By executing devotional service in that way, he gradually becomes attached to Krishna. And when his original dominant love for the Lord becomes manifest, he spontaneously serves the Lord without any motive. This condition is the perfect stage of one's relationship with the Lord. The Lord then looks after the comfort and security of his devotee without being asked. Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita 9:22, Ananyas chintayantu mam ye jana paryapasate tesam nitya vyuktanam yogishamam vahamyaham. The Supreme Lord personally takes care of anyone who is completely engaged in his devotional service. Whatever he has, the Lord protects, and whatever he needs, the Lord supplies. Therefore, why should one bother the Lord with whatever he has, the Lord protects, and whatever he needs, the Lord supplies. Therefore, why should one bother the Lord for something material? Such prayers are unnecessary. Interesting. Shiva Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur explains that even if a devotee wishes the Lord to fulfill a particular desire, the devotee should not be considered a Sakama Bhakta, a devotee with some motive. In the Bhagavad Gita 7:16, Krishna says, Chaturvidha bhajanti mam, jana sukritina virjana, artha jigyasur artharti, gyanicha varatar sabha. O best among the Bharatas, Arjuna, four kinds of pious men render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute truth. The artha and the anartha, who approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead for relief from misery or for some money, are not Sakama Bhaktas, although they appear to be. Being neophyte devotees, they are simply ignorant. Later in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Udara Sab Evaite, they are all magnanimous, uh, or Udara. I'm sorry. Later in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Udara Sarva Evaite. They are all magnanimous, or Udara. Although in the beginning a devotee may harbor some desire, in due course of time it will vanish. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam enjoins Akama Sarvakamova Mokshakama Udaradi Divrena Bhakti Yogena Yajita Purusham Param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he is full of all material desire, is free from material desire, or has a desire for liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10. Even if one wants something material, he should pray to no one but the Lord to fulfill his desire. If one approaches a demigod for the fulfillment of his desires, he is to be considered nastabudi, bereft of all good sense. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 7.20, Kamaistaistra jnana prapadyante nya devata tam tam niyamam asta yapakrite niyatam swaya. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires, surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Lakshmi Devi advises all devotees who approach the Lord with material desires that, according to her practical experience, the Lord is Kamadeva, and thus there is no need to ask him for anything material. She says that everyone should simply serve the Lord without any motive. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sitting in everyone's heart, he knows everyone's thoughts, and in due course of time, he will fulfill all desires. Therefore, let us completely depend on the service of the Lord without bothering him with our material requests. Okay, that's good advice. Very good advice. Text 22. O Supreme, Unconquerable Lord, when they become absorbed in thoughts of material enjoyment, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, as well as other demigods and demons, undergo severe penances and austerities to receive my benedictions. But I do not favor anyone, however great he may be, unless he is always engaged in the service of your lotus feet, because I always keep you within my heart. I cannot favor anyone but a devotee. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi, clearly states that she does not bestow her favor on any materialistic person. Although sometimes a materialist becomes very opulent, in the eyes of another materialist, such opulence is bestowed upon him by the goddess Durga Devi, a material expansion of the goddess of fortune, not by Lakshmi Devi herself. How about that? Those who desire material wealth worship Durga Devi with the following mantra: Dhanam Dehi Rupam Dehi Rupapati Bhajam Dehi. O worshipful Mother Durga Devi, please give me wealth, strength, fame, a good wife, and so on. By pleasing Goddess Durga, one can obtain such benefits, but since they are temporary, they result only in Maya Sukha, illusory happiness. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj, Maya Sukhaya Varam Udva Pato Vimudan. Those who work very hard for material benefits are vimudans, foolish rascals, because such happiness will not endure. On the other hand, devotees like Prahlada and Dhruva Maharaj achieve extraordinary material opulences, but such opulences were not Maya Sukha. When a devotee acquires unparalleled opulences, they are the direct gifts of the goddess of fortune, who resides in their heart, in the heart of Narayana. The material opulences are a person obtains by offering prayers to the goddess Durga are temporary. as described in Bhagavad Gita 7:23. Antavat tu phalam te sam tad bhavati alpamedasam. Men of meager intelligence desire temporary happiness. We have actually seen that one of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura wanted to enjoy the property of his spiritual master, and the spiritual master, being merciful toward him, gave him the temporary property, but not the power to preach the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. That special mercy of the power to preach is given to a devotee who does not want anything, material form, and does not want any material
No, does not
from
want anything
his
material.
spiritual, nothing material, from his spiritual master, but wants only to serve him. The story of the demon Ravana illustrates this point. Although Ravana tried to abduct the goddess of fortune, Sita Devi, from the custody of Lord Ramachandra, he could not possibly do so. The Sita Devi he forcibly took with him was not the original Sita Devi, but an expansion of Maya or Durga Devi. As a result, instead of winning the favor of the real goddess of fortune, Ravana and his whole family were vanquished by the power of Durga Devi. Shishti Stati Pralaya Sadhana Satya Eka. Text 23. O infallible one, your lotus palm is the source of all benediction. Therefore, pure devotees worship it, and you very mercifully place your hand on their heads. I wish that you may also place your hand on my head, for although you already bear my insignia of golden streaks on your chest, I regard this honor as merely a kind of false prestige for me. You show your real mercy to your devotees, not to me. Of course, you are the supreme absolute controller, and no one can understand your motives. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In many places, the Shastras describe the Supreme Personality of Godhead as being more inclined toward his devotees than toward his wife, who always remains on his chest. In Srimad Bhagavatam 11.14.15, it is stated, Na tata me priyatama atmayonir na sankara nacha sankarsano na shrir naivatma cha yata bhavan. Here, Krishna plainly says that his devotees are more dear to him than Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Sankarsana, the original cause of creation, the goddess of fortune, or even his own self. Wow. Elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.9.20, Sukadeva Goswami says, Nemam virin ko na bhavo, na sharir api anga samstraya, prashadam lebire gopi yat tat prapya vimuktitat. Vimuktitat. The Supreme Lord, who can award liberation to anyone, showed more mercy toward the gopis than to Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, or even the goddess of fortune, who was his own wife and is associated with his body. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47-60 also states, Nayam Shriyo Nga Yu Nitanta Rate Prashada, and so forth. The gopis received benedictions from the Lord that neither Lakshmi Devi nor the most beautiful dancers in the heavenly planets could attain. In the Rasa dance, the Lord showed his favor to the most fortunate gopis by placing his arms on their shoulders and dancing with each of them individually. No one can compare with the gopis who received the causeless mercy of the Lord. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that no one can receive the real favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without following in the footsteps of the gopis. Even the goddess of fortune could not receive the same favor as the gopis, although she underwent severe austerities and penances for many years. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discusses this point with Venkatabhata in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 9.111-131. The Lord inquired from Venkatabhata, your worship of Lord Goddess of Fortune, Lakshmi, always remains on the chest of Narayana, and she is certainly the most chaste woman in the creation. However, my Lord is the Lord Sri Krishna, a cowherd boy engaged in tending cows. Why is it that Lakshmi, being such a chaste wife, wants to associate with my Lord? Just to associate with Krishna, Lakshmi abandoned all transcendental happiness in Vaikuntha and for a long time accepted vows and regulated principles and performed unlimited austerities. Venkatabhata replied, Lord Krishna and Lord Narayana are one and the same, but the pastimes of Krishna are more relishable due to their sportive nature. They are very pleasing for Krishna's Saktis. Since Krishna and Narayana are both the same personality, Lakshmi's association with Krishna did not break her vow of chastity. Rather, it was in great fun that the goddess of fortune wanted to associate with Lord Krishna. The goddess of fortune considered that her vow of chastity would not be damaged by her relationship with Krishna. Rather, by associating with Krishna, she could enjoy the benefit of the rasa dance. If she wanted to enjoy herself with Krishna, what fault is there? Why are you joking so about this? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, I know that there is no fault in the goddess of fortune, but still, she could not enter into the rasa dance. We hear this from revealed scriptures. The authorities of Vedic knowledge met Lord Ramachandra in Dandakaranya, and by their penances and austerities, they were allowed to enter into the rasa dance. But can you tell me why the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, could not get that opportunity? Very good question. To this, Venkatabhata replied, I cannot enter into the mystery of this incident. I am an ordinary living being. My intelligence is limited, and I am always disturbed. How can I understand the pastimes of the Supreme Lord? They are deeper than millions of oceans. Wow. Lord Chaitanya replied, Lord Krishna has a specific characteristic. He attracts everyone's heart by the mellow of his personal conjugal love. By following in the footsteps of the inhabitants of the planet known as Raja Loka or Goloka, Vrindavan, one can attain the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. However, the inhabitants of that planet do not know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unaware that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, the residents of Vrindavan, like Nanda Maharaj, Yasoda Devi, and the gopis, treat Krishna as their beloved son or lover. Mother Yasoda accepts him as her son and sometimes binds him to a grinding mortar. Krishna's cowherd boys think he is an ordinary boy and get up on his shoulders. In Goloka Vrindavana, no one has any desire other than to love Krishna. The conclusion is that one cannot associate with Krishna unless he has fully received the favor of the inhabitants of Rajabhumi. Therefore, if one wants to be delivered by Krishna directly, he must take to the service of the residents of Vrindavana, who are the unalloyed devotees of the Lord. That's very, very good advice. Text 24. Sukadeva Goswami continued in Ramyaka Varsa, where Vaivasvata Manu rules, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Matsya at the end of the last era, the Chakshusa Manvantara. Vaivasvata Manu now worships Lord Matsya in pure devotional service and chants the following mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Mukya Tamaya Nama Satvaya Pranam Yojase Sahase Valaya Maha Matsyaya Nama Iti. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is pure transcendence. He is the origin of all life, bodily strength, mental power, and sensory ability. Known as Matsyavatara, the gigantic fish incarnation, he appeared first among all the incarnations. Again, I offer my obeisances unto him. So he appeared first among all incarnations. Okay. Srila Jayadev Goswami sings, Pralayo Pai Odi Jale Kitavan Asivedam Vihita Vahitra Charitam Akedam Keshavajita Mina Sarira Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Soon after the cosmic creation, the entire universe was inundated with water. At that time, Lord Krishna, or Keshava, incarnated as a gigantic fish to protect the Vedas. Therefore, Manu addresses Lord Matsya as Mukyatama, the first incarnation to appear. Fish are generally considered a mixture of the modes of ignorance and passion. But we must understand that every incarnation of the Supreme Personality Godhead is completely transcendental. There is never any deterioration of the Supreme Lord's original transcendental quality. Therefore, the word Satvaya is used here, meaning pure goodness on the transcendental platform. There are many incarnations of the Supreme Lord, Varaha Murti, the boar form, Kurma Murti, the tortoise form, Hayagriva Murti, the form of a horse, and so on. Yet we should never think any of them material. They are always situated on the platform of Suddha Sattva, pure transcendence. Very good advice. Text 26. My dear Lord, just as a puppeteer controls his dancing dolls and a husband controls his wife, your lordship controls all the living entities in the universe, such as the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. Although you are in everyone's heart as the supreme witness and commander and are outside everyone as well, the so-called leaders of societies, communities, and countries cannot realize you. Only those who hear the vibration of the Vedic mantra can appreciate you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Antarbahi, present within and without everything. One must overcome the delusion caused by the Lord's external energy and realize his presence both externally and internally. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1:8-19, Srimati Kunti Devi has explained that Krishna appears in this world nato natya daro yata, exactly like an actor dressed as a player. In Bhagavad Gita 1861, Krishna says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridde sevirjunatistati. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart. O Arjuna, the Lord is situated within everyone's heart and outside as well. Within the heart, he is the super soul, the incarnation, who acts as the advisor and witness. Yet, although God is residing within their hearts, foolish people say, I cannot see God. Please show him to me. Everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of God, Godhead, exactly like dancing dolls controlled by a puppeteer or a woman controlled by her husband. A woman is compared to a doll, Daru Mai, because she has no independence. She should always be controlled by a man. Still, due to false prestige, a class of women wants to remain independent. What to speak of women? All living entities are Prakriti, female, and therefore dependent on the Supreme Lord, as Krishna himself explains in Bhagavad Gita, Aparayam itastvanyam prakritim vidime param. The living entity is never independent. Under all circumstances, he is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. The Lord creates the social divisions of human society, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, and ordains that they follow rules and regulations situated in their particular position. In this way, all members of society remain always under the Supreme Lord's control. Still, some people foolishly deny the existence of God. Self realization means to understand one's subordinate position in relation to the Lord. When one is thus enlightened, he surrenders to the Supreme Personality Godhead and is liberated from the clutches of the material energy. In other words, unless one surrenders to the lotus feet of the Lord, the material energy in its many varieties will continue to control him. No one in the material world can deny that he is under the control. The Supreme Lord, Narayana, who is beyond this material existence, controls everyone. The following Vedic mantra confirms this point. Eko ha vai Narayana asit. Foolish persons think Narayana to be on the platform of ordinary material existence because they do not realize the natural constitutional position of the living entity. They concoct names like Daridra Narayana, Swami Narayana, or Mitya Narayana. However, Narayana is actually the supreme controller of everyone. This understanding is self realization. Text 27. My Lord, from the great leaders of the universe, such as Lord Brahma and other demigods, down to the political leaders of this world, all are envious of your authority. Without your help, however, they could neither separately nor concertantly maintain the innumerable living entities within the universe. You are actually the only maintainer of all human beings, of animals like cows and asses, and of plants, reptiles, birds, mountains, and whatever else is visible within this material world. Haribol. It is fashionable, purport, it is fashionable for materialistic persons to compete with the power of God. When so-called scientists try to manufacture living entities in their laboratories, their only purpose is to defy the talent and ability of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called illusion. It exists even in the higher planetary system, where great demigods like Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and others reside. In this world, everyone is puffed up with false prestige, despite the failure of all his endeavors. When so called philanthropists, who supposedly want to help the poor, are approached by members of the Krishna consciousness movement, they say, "You are simply wasting your time, while I am feeding vast masses of starving people." Unfortunately, their meager efforts, either singly or together, do not solve anyone's problems. Sometimes so called swamis are very eager to feed poor people, thinking them to be Daridra Narayana, the Lord's incarnations, as beggars. They prefer to serve the manufactured Daridra Narayana than the original Supreme Narayana. They say, don't encourage service to Lord Narayana. It is better to serve the starving people of the world. Unfortunately, such materialists, either singly or combined in the form of the United Nations, Harivilas, cannot fulfill their plans. The truth is that the many millions of human beings, animals, birds, and trees, indeed all living entities, are maintained solely by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Eko Bahunam Yog Nidati Kaman. One person, the Supreme Lord, is supplying the necessities of life for all other living entities. That is definition of God right there. To challenge the authority of Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the business of asuras, demons. Yet sometimes suras, or devotees, are also bewildered by the illusory energy and falsely claim to be the maintainer of the entire universe. Such incidents are described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sukadeva Goswami tells how Lord Brahma and King Indra became puffed up and were eventually chastised by Krishna. Text 28. O Almighty Lord, at the end of the millennium, this planet Earth, which is the source of all kinds of herbs, drugs, and trees, was inundated by water and drowned between the devastating waves. At that time, you protected me along with the earth and roamed the sea with great speed. O unborn one, you are the actual maintainer of the entire universe of creation, and therefore you are the cause of all living entities. I offer my respectful obeisances to you. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Envious persons cannot appreciate how wonderfully the Lord creates, maintains, and annihilates the universe. But devotees of the Lord can understand this perfectly well. Devotees can see how the Lord is acting behind the wonderful workings of the material nature. In Bhagavad Gita 9:10, the Lord says, Maya dakshina prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena konteya jagat viparivartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. All the wonderful transformations of nature are happening under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Envious persons cannot see this, but a devotee, even though very humble and even if uneducated, knows that behind all the activities of nature is the supreme hand of the Supreme Being. That's real knowledge. Text 29. Sukadeva Swami continued. In Hiranmaya Varsa, the Supreme Lord Vishnu lives in the form of a tortoise, Kurma Sarira. This most dear and beautiful form is always worshipped there in devotional service by Aryana, the chief resident of Hiranmaya Varsa, along with the other inhabitants of that land. They chant the following hymns. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Priyatama, dearmost, is very significant in this verse. Each devotee regards a particular form of the Lord as most dear. Because of an atheistic mentality, some people think that the tortoise, boar, and fish incarnations of the Lord are not very beautiful. They do not know that any form of the Lord is always the fully opulent personality of Godhead. Since one of his opulences is infinite beauty, all the Lord's incarnations are very beautiful and are appreciated as such by devotees. Non-devotees, however, think that Lord Krishna's incarnations are ordinary material creations, and therefore they distinguish between the beautiful and the not beautiful. A certain form of the Lord is worshipped by a particular devotee because he loves to see the form of the Lord. As stated in Brahma Samhita 5.33, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Davayo Anancha. The very beautiful form of the Lord is always youthful, since servants of a particular form of the Lord always see that form as very beautiful, and thus they engage in constant devotional service to him. Text 30. O my Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who have assumed the form of a tortoise. You are the reservoir of all transcendental qualities, and being entirely untinged by matter, you are perfectly situated in pure goodness. You move here and there in the water, but no one can discern your position. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance before you because of your transcendental position. You are not limited by past, present, and future. You are present everywhere as the shelter of all things. And therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you again and again. Now, that is a real prayer right there. It's a beautiful statement. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said, Goloka eva nivasati akilatma bhuta. The Lord always remains in Goloka, the topmost planet. The topmost planet in the spiritual world. At the same time, he is all pervading. This paradox is only possible for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of all opulence. The Lord's all pervasiveness is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1861, where Krishna states, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hridese Arjuna Tistati. The Supreme Lord is seated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Lord says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivisto matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Therefore, although the Lord is present everywhere, he cannot be seen with ordinary eyes. As Aryama says, the Lord is Anupalakshita Sthana. No one can locate him. This is the greatness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, 1 second. Text 31. My dear Lord, this visible cosmic manifestation is a demonstration of your creative energy. Since the countless varieties of forms within this cosmic manifestation are simply a display of your external energy, this Virat Rupa, universal body, is not your real form. Except for a devotee in transcendental consciousness, no one can perceive your actual form. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Mayavadi philosophers think the universal form of the Lord to be real and his personal form illusory. We can understand their mistake by a simple example. A fire consists of three elements: heat and light, which are energy of the fire, and the fire itself. Okay, that makes three. Anyone can understand that the original fire is the reality, and that the heat and light are simply the fire's energy. Heat and light are the formless energies of fire, and in that sense, they are unreal. Only the fire has form, and therefore it is the real form of the heat and light. As Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Mayatatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Thus, the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, Matstani sarvabhutani na chaham tesu avastita. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. Text 32. My dear Lord, you manifest your different energies in countless forms, as living entities born from wombs, from eggs, and from perspiration, as plants and trees that grow out of the earth, as all living entities, both moving and standing, including the demigods, the learned sages, and the pitas, as outer space, as the higher planetary system containing the heavenly planets, and as the planet Earth with its hills, rivers, seas, oceans, and islands. Indeed, all the stars and planets are simply manifestations of your different energies. But originally, you are one without a second. Therefore, there is nothing beyond you. This entire cosmic manifestation is therefore not false, but is simply a temporary manifestation of your inconceivable energy. Yeah, Krishna is everything. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse completely rejects the theory of Rama Satyam Jagan Mithya. It's the Mayavadi philosophy. I used to think that is the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But then later on, I realized, wait a minute, I made a big mistake. This is the theory of the nonsense philosophers, the Mayavadis. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, which states that spirit or Brahman is real, whereas the manifested material world with its great variety of things, is false. Nothing is false. One thing may be permanent and another temporary, but both the permanent and the temporary are facts. Very beautiful statement here. For example, if someone becomes angry for a certain period, no one can say that his anger is false. It is simply temporary. Everything we experience in our daily lives is of the same character. It is temporary but real. The different kinds of living entities coming from various sources are very clearly described in this verse. Some are born from a womb, and some, like the certain insects, from human perspiration. Others hatch from eggs, and still others sprout from the earth. A living entity takes birth under different circumstances according to his past activities or karma. Although the body of the living entity is material, it is never false. No one will accept the argument that since a person's material body is false, under his uh, is false, murder has no repercussions. Oh yeah, that's a false statement. Our temporary bodies are given to us according to our karma, and we must remain in our given bodies to enjoy the pains and pleasures of life. Our bodies cannot be called false. They are only temporary. In other words, the energy of the Supreme Lord is as permanent as the Lord Himself, although His energy is sometimes manifest and sometimes not. As summarized in the Vedas, Sarvam Lag Idam Brahman. Everything is Brahman. Brahman meaning the Supreme Lord. Okay, we will stop right there, my dear devotees. Are there any questions? Are there any questions or comments? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare. Any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribol.
Maharaj, in text 23, where we were discussing the Mahaprabhu's conversation with Venkat Bhatta, it said that, the conclusion is that one has to, in order to associate with Krishna, one has to receive the favor from inhabitants of Vrajabhumi. So that is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's recommendation for his followers was, like, to worship Krishna is the highest form rather than, worshipping any other form of the Lord in any other incarnation. Like, but devotees, there are devotees of all kinds. They want to serve Lord in different forms, like Narayana or Lord Ram. So the process that we follow, is there any difference, like the rules and regulation or the process that we follow? Is there any difference between the process, that the devotees follow for achieving the Lord's association in his different forms, or is it the same?
We have to understand that the Lord has infinite forms, but every individual can choose a certain form of the Lord to worship. And but that form must be a bona fide form. So some people, just like in our temple, we have deities of Krishna, and then in different temples, there can be different forms of Krishna that are being worshipped. So therefore it says in this verse today, let's see. It says that Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktamortina. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. So the Lord has an unmanifested form also. Thus, the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, Matstani sarvabhutani na chaham teso avastita. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. This is the way we should understand. The form of Krishna is inconceivable. However, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. So, therefore, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Thus, the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Matstani sarvabhutani na chaham teso avastita. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. So that's the whole point. Without becoming a devotee, we'll never understand the real form of the Lord. But due to his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami and the Vaishnava Acharyas, they are explicitly explaining the real form of the Lord as the son of Vasudeva and his wife. His form is as baby Krishna or as Krishna as an adolescent. But from that point, he never gets old. He always looks like an adolescent. So one can say that that is his real form. And it's eternal. So here it says, this inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. So the Lord is present in everyone's body as the knower of the body. So there are two knowers of the body. There's the personality that is the person, and then there's Krishna. So this is something inconceivable because the Lord expands himself and by his Achintya Shakti into everyone's body. And therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. Krishna is in the heart of every living entity. He's the supreme controller. No one is equal to him or greater than him. He is the supreme personality of Godhead for everyone. So this is an inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy, and it is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. That is our takeaway for today. Only a devotee can understand Krishna and his many incarnations and expansions. The materialistic people cannot even imagine that there's someone like Krishna. I'm not sure. Does that answer your question?
Yes, to some extent, it answers. So my question was like specific to what was Lord Chaitanya's recommendation for, uh, uh, you know, worship all the devotees. Also, they may worship in the different forms of the Lord, knowing that he has a personal form. But like he says that even Lakshmi Devi, it desires for entering into the Vrajabhumi, that mood that Lord Chaitanya wanted his followers to, aspire for. So, is the process that the different devotees follow, is it different or is it the same?
Well, we should follow what Prabhupada has established. We worship Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears as a baby and as uh, a what do you call it? Up to 16 years old. Uh, so that is the form that we meditate on, either as a child or as a 16-year-old, 16 or 20-year-old person. He never gets old, and he is always uh, transcendentally situated. He's never touched by the material energy. Therefore, it says here, it says, Mayatatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtinam. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Okay, that means that Krishna is present everywhere in the universe and is in the heart of every living entity. Thus, the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham tesu avastita. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. This Achintya means something that is almost impossible to understand. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. So, Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas make it easy to understand. Why? Because we see baby Krishna or Krishna as an adolescent. He never gets older than being an adolescent. So we can choose either to worship him in this baby form or as an adolescent. That simplifies everything. Therefore, it says, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. So one time there was this lady that was coming around the devotees, and she was listening to some lectures. And at a certain point, she made a statement, and she said that I can't accept that God is a baby. And we said, well, I mean, that's what it says here in the Shastras. She said, no, I can't accept this. Well, you see, the form of Krishna as a baby, or the form of Krishna as an adolescent, bewilders people who are not listening carefully and who are not surrendered to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the explanations of the Lord given by bona fide acharyas. They simply speculate, and they cannot accept the unlimited, let's say, potencies of the Lord. He can appear as a baby, just like as a baby he was taken by uh, uh, Maharaj, uh, by his father, uh, who's carrying him in his arms. Uh, uh, what is it? To protect him. So here we see that Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, could also appear in the baby form and seemingly completely dependent on his father to protect him. So all this is inconceivable to the materialistic people. But however, devotees can understand this because we read the verses and purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam. The materialistic people simply use their logic and speculation to try and understand the Lord. Therefore, they never understand anything about Krishna. So we should carefully hear the Bhagavatam spoken by genuine devotees, and then we will understand all the, not all, but we'll understand the transcendental nature of the Lord that is not touched by the material energy, although it's appearing in the material energy. That's why it says here, thus the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, Matstani Sarvabhutani Na Chahante Svabhastita. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. That is our takeaway for today. In other words, the Lord has there's an impersonal conception of the Lord, which is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. And the Lord also says that the entire creation is resting on his energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. So, because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. That is our takeaway for today. That's why it says, Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Mayatatam idam sarvam sagat avyaktamurtina. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Thus, the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, Matstani Sarvabhutani Na Chahante Svabhastita. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, He is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. That's why we pray to Krishna to manifest his real form. The Mayavadis don't pray like that. They don't think God has a form. But devotees pray, knowing that Krishna has a form, they pray to Krishna to please uh, it's, to please manifest your transcendental form, so that we can worship you with love and devotion. Okay, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. But obviously, there are many mysteries about Krishna, but all those mysteries are easily understood by the devotees of the Lord who carefully hear the verses and the purports of Srila Prabhupada. That's why it says, Mayatatam idam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtinam. By me, Krishna says, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. Thus, the impersonal conception of the Lord is like the expansion of heat and light from a fire. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord also says, Matstani Sarvabhutani Nachahante Sarvastita. The entire material creation is resting on Krishna's energy, either material, spiritual, or marginal. But because his form is absent from the expansion of his energy, he is not personally present. This inconceivable expansion of the Supreme Lord's energy is called Achintya Shakti. This Achintya would mean like it's unbelievable power. Therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. So, what is the real form of the Lord? It's Krishna, either as a baby or as a what you would call up to like 16 years or 20 years old. But he never gets old. So, and also Krishna has what's called inconceivable expansion of his energies. So, therefore, no one can understand the real form of the Lord without becoming his devotee. Because there are too many, what would be called contradictory statements. Those statements are not contradictory for devotees, but for non-devotees, they seem to be contradictory. That he can be at the same time a baby or an adult. That he can be full of all his opulences, even as a baby. That is very difficult for people to understand. Even as a baby, he still has all his transcendental potencies. So we can discuss this some more. Anyway, thank you very much for your devotees. Yes, didn't say?
So, yes, Maharaj, I have a question. This is a little bit pertaining to yesterday at the end. We were discussing, I think Mataji asked question about like the 50 years, like after 50 years, you're supposed to renounce and, go to the secluded place, whatnot. So my question was like, in our devotional process is it's not necessary to go into like a jungle area or whatever, right? Like, I mean, Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, they were still in the town. They were renounced, but I think they were like staying in like simple huts and doing preaching and writing about Vaishnava literature, and is that sort of a difference from that earlier ages where these kings used to actually go into the jungle area or like away from civilization? Instead, our acharyas really were still in like Vrindavan or Mayapur. I mean, they were still, within they were interacting with normal people, but they were still kind of living a very elevated spiritual life. Is that some difference there?
We follow Srila Prabhupada's example.
Yes.
Was always with us in his, form and preaching Krishna consciousness. So we follow Prabhupada. He went through different periods. He was married, he had children, and then he gave up his attachment to married life and became a sannyasi. And for the rest of his life, he remained as a sannyasi, preaching and traveling always, never staying very long in one place, traveling and preaching and establishing Krishna consciousness on a very solid foundation, so that in the future no one could corrupt the teaching of pure Krishna consciousness. So we follow Prabhupada. Whatever he's done in his life, we follow him.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, so we don't have to worry about, anything else. Prabhupada didn't appear in different forms. He maintained one form, and
Yes.
he established Krishna consciousness, even in a very, let's say, very older age, and we basically are very fortunate to know about Prabhupada and his, let's say, teaching. So, whatever there is in this world, we have to see it through the prism of Srila Prabhupada's example and not anything else. If we go to other things, we'll get confused. If we simply follow what Prabhupada taught us and maintain it purely, we'll never be confused. And other people won't be confused either. If you want to be a perfect teacher or devotee, simply follow Srila Prabhupada. And you can't imitate him, but you can follow his example. He was always, he hardly slept more than 2 or 3 hours a night. And he was always translating and then always preaching and always traveling. Well, we're not on the same level as Prabhupada, but we can follow his example of being a renounced lover of Krishna. Therefore, he never deviated from always talking about Krishna. He did not deviate himself to mundane activities. So if we can learn to also avoid all mundane activities and engage always in Krishna conscious activities, that is our perfection in this lifetime. We might not achieve that perfection immediately, but by continually hearing about Prabhupada and chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we will come to that position also of completely engaged in Krishna's service. Prabhupada waited until he was, in his later life he was also married. He also had business, etc. But at a certain point, he gave everything up and completely preached Krishna consciousness. So, if we follow Prabhupada's example, it's something that we can actually do. We can have a what might be called a normal life until our children are become adults, and then we can gradually uh, completely uh, surrender to preaching and engaging in all kinds of devotional service to help people become Krishna conscious. So my statement here is that we should follow Prabhupada's example. We can't equal Prabhupada, but we can follow his example. So that's my takeaway for today. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We can talk about this some more tomorrow. Thank you very much, my dear devotees. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Hare
The session is over, right?
Yeah.